if I wanted to shoot a feature film on Super 8 right now, 2 hours worth of film with purchase, process, and transfer would be roughly about 3 grand.
Thank you for joining us on the Downing Cut. Today, my guest is a creative force. He's a filmmaker, a musician, a writer, a poet, and a master of Super 8mm, and the visionary behind Blue November Creations and the Blue November Micro Film Fest. Please welcome to the Downing Cut the dreamer, the storyteller, Captain Chambers. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's tell the audience how we know each other, because this is special for me because Captain Chambers, and we'll talk about your name, but
Yeah.
Captain Chambers was one of the very first people. Is when I got into acting. I don't even remember how I found you or how you found me. I think it was like an ad or something. When I, he was one of the first people that actually gave me a role, and he was, and I. This is how of a beginner I was. I had no idea pretty much what I was doing. I just took your direction. I had no idea that you were shooting on 8mm. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I was just like, oh, I get to act. And that was it. And it was even, I think, I don't think there was any audio, right? There was no
No,
audio in it. So
no.
you were like, just pretend this and you're giving me direction. And that, yeah, I just fond memories, very fond memories. And and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this is like the first time I've spoken to you since what 2008 was it?
Uh,
I mean,
I
it's amazing.
think 2009, maybe 2010.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
you want to move up that date? I looked at the picture on my Facebook and it was 2008.
was it? Yeah.
It's
So
been that
we shouldn't trust my memory. We
long.
shouldn't trust my memory.
What?
Uh,
Okay, let's break down your name first. Let's get that out of the way. Captain Chambers. Where did Captain come from? How did that originate?
well, I'm a science fiction fan, and there's two things that really influenced me, and it kind of spills over into the romanticized idea of being a space captain and, science fiction, science fact, but it's Captain Han Solo and Captain Picard, those two things.
Yeah.
So I was in high school. My the first film I did on Super 8, and ever since then I've been a filmmaker, was in 1991, and I was a junior in high school, and so Star Trek Next Generation was still running, and so it's a big influence on me, and that's where I came up with the name. I like alliteration, CC, so there you go.
Really? Yeah. Well, so you just started going by that name then. No one just started calling you the name Captain?
No, I started using it myself, and use it as a pseudonym, obviously. But
Yeah.
um, oddly, there's a group of people that, um, not to go down too far a digression here, but like I performed at a open mic at a coffee house for about almost 2 years, and there's people there that do not know my real name. They only know me as Captain. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
I mean, that's how I knew you too. And then I was like, oh, he does have a real name.
I'm
That's
afraid
right.
so.
Well, Captain, let's tell me about how did your love for film start and how did this, you know, you're a musician, you're a writer, a poet. How did all this start up and to boil inside of you? What sparked that interest?
Again, I was just always an imaginative child, and my mother really encouraged me to explore that. They, I watched a lot of science fiction television. Anything that was imaginative, like, really drew my attention, and so I just kind of dove in since I was wee. And then my mom's like, "Hey, did you check out this television show? Did you check out this television show? Did you see this movie?" Um, and so that just kind of spawned a love of creating things. And so I was always drawing, I was always writing. But it wasn't until like later on, as I started to approach high school, but not quite high school, that I decided I want to write. And so I started writing a variety of things. Um, Also, uh, I was getting to the point where I was paying closer attention to movies and television shows, like thinking I can do that. And then I had inherited our old Super 8 camera. We had a Kodak XL55, um, and we weren't using it anymore because I think we had one of those big giant JVC, no, it was a Magnavox VHS camcorder that took the full size VHS tapes.
Yeah.
The thing weighed like 15 pounds. And we never used that either. I could have completely done video instead of film, but like I was able to go down to a local warehouse market grocery store to their film lab and still buy film in 1991. And then you could take it back, and that's what I did. I took it back to the film lab, and they developed it because at that time it was kind of in the waning years. I think a lot of those labs started to dry up mid to late 90s, before the resurgence of film. And so late December, I think it was like December 8th or something like that, I bought a cartridge of film and I went and shot this little avant garde piece in my bedroom and did some interesting imagery, and I brought it out, I think, in about 2000. It was about 2012 because I did a fundraiser for my film Brother, which we shot in 2012, and then did I think we premiered that and did a screening in 2013.
Wow.
So I kind of just looked at this piece again, and I gave it a name because it's kind of its own um, snapshot of that time. But that's kind of where it began. So I started writing little science fiction scripts that never went anywhere. But then I started doing little bits of film where I would shoot sequences and I would experiment. And then I started writing. Uh, uh, I still have something that I shot in 2000, 2001, and 2002 at the same time every year, and it's in film. I just have to digitally transfer it, and it is an actual written script. So that's something that I'm going to be working on amongst so many other cartridges. I have probably about 30 cartridges of film to develop. I have about,
Holy smokes.
oh yeah, and I have just hundreds of feet of Super 8, and just life gets in the way and you start to catch up. And so now I'm at that point where okay, I'm going to bring a lot of this stuff out, do new 2K or 4K scans of the film. Yeah, because we'll talk about that a little bit later, but like it's really great to be a filmmaker right now if you want to do celluloid and work in a digital medium. But we'll come to that in just a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it just blossomed from there. And then I was doing poetry at a coffee house, and so I recruited people there. Um, Although my first narrative was shot on 8 millimeter video, I did two films on analog 8 millimeter video, but I also was still shooting Super 8 whenever possible. And at that time, there's just not a really good way for you to transfer it digitally. And the thing about the technology is it's advancing so fast. But now we're in a place where I can buy a cartridge of film, shoot it, develop it, and then send it off and have a high quality transfer digitally, and then edit it like everybody else does on a nonlinear editor. So
Oh
it
wow.
worked really well.
I had no idea. What so developing Super 8 is still it's easy, accessible. It didn't fade out into the distance. There's still shops that will do that.
Yeah, it started to for quite a while. In fact, there used to be Alpha Cine in Seattle. So when my wife and I first moved here in 2006, I would go downtown off of Mercer's where the old Alpha Cine location was. I could buy film, I could drop it off to be developed. Then they got pushed out by the developments and they went down south, like right across from Boeing Field.
Mm.
And so I had this whole plan where I work on the east side in Kirkland, and I would get off work, and I would have enough time if I got off at 3:30 to take I-90 over with traffic and hit Alpha Cine before they would close, and I would drop off or pick up film. And the unfortunate thing is that move was so costly that they were not able to financially recover from it. So they closed down, I want to say, somewhere mid, probably about 2014, 2015, if memory serves. But for a while, we had a lab here. But since that time, I've been using Spectra Film and Video down in Burbank.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, so they do transfer. You can buy film from them. They're probably about the best price I've found on developing. And even though the prices are going up a little each year, and that's expected,
yeah.
it's still a pretty good value. I think it's about $21 a cartridge to develop it.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah,
how many minutes is in a cartridge?
about 3 minutes.
That's it?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
but let me put it to you into a different perspective because I've done the math. I have a spreadsheet for this, and even
Yeah.
with the increases in the film stock and the developing price, I could do if I wanted to shoot a feature film on Super 8 right now, 2 hours worth of film with purchase, process, and transfer would be roughly about 3 grand.
Wow.
So, so if you put it in perspective of a production cost, that's not terrible.
True. That is true. I mean, cameras now run for 3 grand, and then you got to buy the memory cards, all the accessories, lights, tripod. Yep.
Yeah. And 16, because I do have a 16 that I'm going to be working with some point in the future as well. But 16, you could do a 2 hour film for about 5 or 6, and that's still pretty good. And yeah, so and and it's not. I don't think it's no longer a battle. There was a battle there for a while about digital versus video,
Yeah.
and um, as I'm sure all of us know, it's like we have our own internal growth, and so I'm trying to be less hypercritical of things. And there, I used to be a staunch believer in celluloid, and I still am. But I also had my digital side, but I kind of preferred the celluloid. The thing is, both of them have unique qualities that are beneficial. They um, you can do something with this one that you can't do with the other, and I think they're both viable. And now that you can take a celluloid film and take all that warmth and all that chemical capturing those images, and it literally is a moment in time. It's an impression. Like when you look at it, that's frozen in time. And that's why people are coming back to photographs, is because there's a magical element to it, but there's also a good science to it as well. And so you can do the celluloid and you can do the digital, but like when you do the celluloid, you can you can have the digital aspect of it too. And let's take Star Wars for example, a big influence to me. When they were doing all the special effects, you'd have your negative, then you'd have all your intermediate stocks. So you do your green screen or your blue screen at the time, and then you do the matte, and then you do the cutout, and you do so each one of those is a film stock that you'd have to buy and develop.
Mm.
All the work towards getting a work print, and then you get something that you would project. So there's a lot of cost involved. Now you need one stock, you develop it, then you transfer it digitally, and a lot of the stuff like let's say Nolan with his IMAX 65 millimeter transferring to 70 millimeter projection. That's that film stock is now in whatever resolution he's using. But like to say, if I had a 35 millimeter motion picture camera right now, you can transfer that into 4K, probably 6 and 8K now. I think they're even working with 12K in some of the higher end cameras, and possibly with the transfers.
Yeah.
I've only seen up to about 6 and 8K in digital transfers for film, but I also haven't been really paying attention because I'm not going to do that anytime soon. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, So that's the beauty of film. And it's like, yes, it's expensive, but like a lot of people are, at least in short films and music videos and things like uh, fashion montages. It's like little short things. A lot of people are finding, hey, this is a creative outlet. And then you still have your diehards like Nolan and I think Tarantino and there's a couple other filmmakers that still use film. But then you have people like Roger Deakins, who's one of the most amazing cinematographers, and he doesn't have a preference. He's like, it's whatever the director wants and whatever I can use. I really like his use of the Arri Alexas as a digital camera. Those are just gorgeous cameras, um, pricey but gorgeous. Yeah. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's what the creativity or the story needs, and that's the most important part.
Do you find yourself, are you shooting digital at all? Like, have you transitioned or?
It's funny you say that because I kind of felt like I kind of need to be. I'm kind of against the grain in a lot of things. I like to. I'm more about the art and the story than what the industry is doing or what the scene is doing. And
Sure.
it's no offense to anybody, and there's no wrong answers. Um, but I believe in art before product because then once you have the art, doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Right.
It's just that you've put your emphasis into the art first. But I also felt like I kind of needed to at least be in the vicinity of what a few people were doing. So I started looking at cameras and researching a lot. And of course, the Sony FX3 caught my eye. And I'm like, okay, how much is that? Not good. And
Yep.
but I set sometimes you just have to set the goal. So I set a goal of like, okay, if I wanted to get that, a lens and a proper editing laptop, what would it be? And I came up with a figure of about 8 grand. And that's probably being modest. So
Mm-hmm.
then I started researching and I saw a lot of forums where people were saying, yeah, those cameras are great, but why don't you go get you a Panasonic GH4 and then work with that until you can get something, afford the other one. So I started researching GH4s, and I started seeing the prices, and I'm like, okay, $500. That one's $400. That one's 350. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can get one for $300. And I'm like, so I kind of set that goal, and sure enough, Glazer's Camera in Seattle has an eBay store, and I found one for $350. I started watching it. Then they sent me an offer, $299. Sold.
Nice.
So I bought that. I got a couple of lenses. I'm still new to it, so I'm still working with it. But
Mm-hmm.
I did the uh, firmware upgrade, so it's got all the bells and whistles, and it's a full 4K camera. So now I've got 2 lenses, and I'm looking at other lenses and trying to expand my knowledge there. And I'm getting used to the camera so that I can start shooting with it. And the laptop I'm using right here is I just got a Lenovo Legion 5i gaming laptop as my editing because I'm going to try using DaVinci Resolve. So
Awesome.
yeah,
You're
and
set.
I love it that it's free. Like
Yeah.
um, here's this amazing thing that is now free. So I'm like, sure, I'm gonna, but it's intensive, so I needed a good laptop, and so I was able to take that $8,000 goal and get it down to I think I spent right around maybe 2,500.
Wow.
Yeah, but if if filmmakers are anything, they're thrifty. If
Oh
they're
yeah.
nothing else, they're thrifty. Yeah.
100%. I think one of the best things I like about DaVinci is they actually have free online training on their website, and that just is amazing because I still have to go through a lot of it and learn. But that's we actually filmed Cousin on the FX3 just to
Oh,
see,
nice.
and it just looked amazing. I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I color corrected it, not knowing how to color correct, so it's kind of like wonky, but it turned out. I mean, I was happy. I was happy it came out. So
Yeah. I've only seen just this much of it, and it looks good. Did you buy an FX3 or did you rent?
yeah, we bought it.
Nice.
We have a Sony A7 III, and being an actor, you're like, can I really do this behind the camera thing? And so we, during the pandemic, we shot a short film that a young 11-year-old girl at the time had this story concept. So we did it, and it was a bunch of kids. It's called Pyrocene. It's on the channel as well, and it was just a way to test. Can we do this? Can I? I was the one that my wife directed. I was a cinematographer, and I'm just trying to mimic things that I've seen. I'm mimicking stuff that I've learned from other directors and other cinematographers, and just thought, okay, we'll give it a try. And once we did that, we're like, okay, it looks okay, it works, we can do this. And then that's the next one was, okay, I'm going to write a script. It was the first script I wrote, and then we'll try to make a movie. We'll just try it, see what happens, and we're pretty pleased on how the outcome is. And so we're going on to the next one, trying to do that. So I want to ask you though, it's interesting that we're talking about celluloid and films and the way I just saw something today on it was a kind of a YouTuber talking about why do movies not look like how they used to look like. And it's interesting to me because when I, editing digital, I see people always want to add grain into their footage to make it look like film, which
Yeah.
in my mind I was like, but it's not film, why do you want to make it? But now, talking to someone who's an expert in that arena, there's a reason behind that. It's to have
Yeah.
that feeling and emotion and that type of thing. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not a fan of like there's filters out there that put like lines, and
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of that. Like I want to make when I make a film, it's like I want to make it as clean as possible. But the celluloid itself, it's kind of like analog audio. Like why do people go to a recording studio that has analog gear? It's because there's a warmth. Like um, my wife's band, which I'm in as bass player, we go to a studio out in Index, Paradise Sound, and he added an addition onto his house and built a complete studio. Like it's
well,
not like a basement studio; it's designed acoustically as a studio. And one of the things that's really awesome about his studio is that he started off, and he still has the machines. He has two 24 track Otari tape machines. And because when he first started out, that's what he was recording on. He has since transferred to Pro Tools. But here's the cool thing: all the mic pre's and the compressors and even the microphones are all still tube. So, yeah, when I went into the isolation booth with my bass amp, he runs me into a DI that sends one signal, and it's a tube DI. So there's these little glowing tubes adding that warmth. And then he's got me hooked up my amplifier. He's got a microphone in front of that going to a power supply that is tube. So everything before it hits Pro Tools is warmed up.
interesting.
So it doesn't sound as clinical or as sterile as digital can sometimes sound. And now there's plugins and all sorts of uh, interesting things that we can use to warm things up. But still, it's a little bit artificial, and it's kind of like you want to get the best quality in front of the lens first that you can, just like you want to get the best recording first. You want to do as little tweaking in the background and post as possible. Um, the funny thing is, I think there's more of an emphasis in filmmaking and post production for film that allows for post production tweaking than there is in audio recording. Audio recording is strict. Like I should be doing very little after we record this, or else we need to record it again. But it's different. It's funny you talk about color grading. My approach, and it may end in failure, is I'm going to use filters on the lens to do my color grading. I don't want to do anything in post. I want to cut. I want to paste and fade and dissolve, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of editor I am. But the emphasis in the industry and the scene right now is, and it's great. And I don't want to knock colorist at all. It's a skill, and but for me, like I want to adopt that kind of audio philosophy. But like talking about celluloid film, um, I think that's one of the ways that a lot of people like. I've been reading a lot about Tiffin's new Glimmer Glass films. Uh, Faye just watched Wicked not too long ago, and the cinematographer, she used the Tiffin Glimmer Glass, and it's a square um, that she used. I can't remember what the camera was,
Mm.
but it's a digital production. But she used the Glimmer Glass, and what it does is it takes some of the lights and it makes them just a little bit fuzzy, like
Mm.
not fuzzy as in noise, but like a little warm, a little glow,
Like a
and it
mist,
takes
like a
the
mist filter.
it's not quite a mist filter. It's
Like
different.
something
It just
else.
takes those lights and just gives a little bit of blur in there,
Hmm.
and it makes it more cinematic. Because otherwise, the image without the filter is it's very digital looking. It's like, oh, everything is perfectly, but that's just not real life. That's why it's really interesting about resolutions. Like I think I'm happy with having a 4K camera because unless I'm going to be doing something that's going to be projected on the side of a building or doing special effects where you want to have this huge resolution where you can go into the details, like I don't really see the need for 4K or beyond 4K. Like 6K maybe, but like anything beyond that, I'm just like, what is the point? Because our eyes can only see so much,
Right.
and that was brought up with The Hobbit because they shot in 60 frames per second, and your eyes are not designed to look at that, but we're trained um, or receptive to things like, and this is why uh, when you do a cinematic kind of quality or setting on a digital camera, it's always 24 frames per second. It's That's because it's a natural flow that our eyes see, and that's why cinema cameras shoot at 24 frames per second. You can do that on Super 8, but most of them are 18, and that's okay. But like if you
Hmm.
shoot 16 or 35 millimeter, and I assume I've never shot or been up close to a 65 millimeter IMAX camera, but I'm assuming that does 24 frames as well. But I could be mistaken. But that's because that's what our eyes are used to. That's what our brains can interpret, and so when we see something that's starkly digital, that's why I think they talk about smoothing on flat screen TVs, like turn that off because it's unnatural. We know what our brains are going to be receptive to. So a lot of that stuff is just noise. But even a good example, and going back to Roger Deakins, Skyfall, the James Bond film. He shot that with the Arri Alexa, and that is so gorgeous. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's digital, but when I look at it, it's just stunning. Like, I had to look a couple times. Is this film or is this digital? But it's so sharp, but it's so warm, and that's because he's just a great cinematographer.
Well, let me
And I
ask you.
like
Let me ask you about that. The warmness. That's not color grading. That's not the
you can do that in
tonality of it.
color grading.
Okay.
You can do that in color grading. But again, going back to the audio aspect, analog tape. Like if you were recording an album on analog tape, it has a built-in warmth, it has a built-in compression, and that's what we've grown accustomed to over decades of music. And so when we transitioned in the 90s to digital recording, it's still like a viable point when people are recording with digital audio workstations. It's like, how do I warm this up? I want this plugin that sounds like this 1960s um, preamp, and it's because I want that warmth. I want that tube sound, which is really ironic, but it's beautiful at the same time. And so with film, um, color grading can add warmth. Yes, you can, but like with celluloid, it's kind of inherent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you if you shoot like and you can screw it up too. I mean, if you know what you're doing, that film is going to have its own natural warmth to it. That's the nature of celluloid. It's capturing all these images in these little tiny molecules in the emulsion, and it's a beautiful thing. But um, how can we do that digitally? And that's the question I'm asking myself. And to me, and I just invested in a ton of used Koken square filters because you have the
Very cool.
same, yeah, you have the same box, the same filters, but then you just what the filter holder connects to, you can change that by ring size depending on what kind of lens you have. That way, you're not buying. Well, I've got three lenses, so I got to buy three sets of filters. So, but it's also interesting too that like people like you know Tiffin, uh, their filters are, and there's all, check out Tiffin's website. I think you'll be really intrigued by it, or I might forward an email to you because
Yeah.
uh, they've got uh, glimmer glass. There's like this shimmer glass. There's all these different types
Mm.
of filters they're doing for different things, and they've got like a triangle of for everything from halation to contrast to blur, and it's just pretty interesting. But yeah,
Speak.
I think warmth is very important.
Oh
It's
yeah.
human.
It makes me think of with the technology that we have and the advances that we keep on making. I mean, music is one thing about it. It's like we're always trying to we have digital music, but how do we make it sound like it's on vinyl? How
Yeah,
we got a camera that shoots digital, but how do we make it look like it's on cellular? It's always this back and forth and back and forth. And I think one thing I heard was like the dynamic range with digital cameras is so much wider than it is on film cameras, and that's part of it, right?
yeah, yeah. So if I may add to that, like let's take it a step. Like we're talking about what's on the surface of like how do I make this look like something that's old, or how do I make it a quality of something that's old. But like what we're really talking about, if we go above another layer above that, is like how do we make it more human? And without divulging into too much stuff, like we need more human. We need more humanity. We need more of that essence that makes us who we are together as a community of so many cultures and people. Because I don't know if this is a saying that I coined or that I read it somewhere, but like, people are defined by their art and culture. Like, no one's going to care about the 300 pictures we took of our lunch for this afternoon, like out of
Right.
so many times that we've done that, but people will want to know what we wrote, what we created. That will persevere beyond our lives. And so I think, and that goes back to like why I'm so about focusing on art. There's so many things against us as artists. Like there's so many struggles, and people going into the industry and pursuing that path, and they may achieve those goals. They may be a part of a team and they may be happy with that. But I think most people, they go down that path because they want to direct a film or they want to act in a film or both. And but you have to start wherever you have to start. You have to start at the bottom and climb up. And some people will never reach that, but they may be a part of a team and happy. But I my thing is how sad it is that you didn't get to realize your story. Like you had stories inside of you that are not being told. So for me, and I'm self produced and I'm broke and work a day job and everything. So to me, with only so much time allowed, I'm going to focus on, okay, I'm going to find a different way and I'm going to do it exactly the way I want. I understand that that may not be everybody's cup of tea,
No,
and
I
that's
think you,
okay.
you have to do that. I think that's excuse me. I think the reason why most people follow what other people do is because they don't know what else to do. They don't know
Hmm.
how to decipher the noise and how to go their own path. And I think that's really important to. I mean, you're basically learning how to problem solve on your own. You're not
Yeah,
just going, well, they did it. I guess I'll do it that way. They did. I guess I'll do it that way. You know, it's really understanding that this is the flavor I think I'm going to try. And it doesn't matter if anyone else has tried that flavor. I just want to see what happens.
yeah,
And I think that's great. I think that's human right there. That's the
yeah.
soul. That's the essence.
So
Um,
if I may intercede just for a second,
yeah.
I know you don't drink, and I don't know if you have a beverage, but
Oh yeah.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't do this. So cheers to you, but also to
Cheers.
David Lynch.
Yes.
Cheers.
Absolutely. So, Captain, I want to ask you though, what now you're a director, you're a writer, you've made films. What qualities or skills do you believe set an exceptional actor apart from the rest?
Honesty. Um, so let's bring this back to you and I, because, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. I don't know if it's um,
I don't know what you're going to
if
say.
you remember, but how, you asked how we found each other.
Yeah.
I found you on Model Mayhem.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I
Yes,
think I still have an account on there too.
because I'm always looking everywhere, and I'm like, okay, if I can't find who I want, maybe there's somebody here who wants to act. And I find that a lot. I found it in a lot of my film work. It's like there's always I've only worked with like maybe a couple of people who were actual actors.
Mm,
Um, but a lot of people, I bring them along and I just reach out and I connect with them, and I find them in the most unusual places or just because I know them. And then we have a conversation, things connect, and then there you go. So I'd actually saw your profile on Model Mayhem of all things. I'm
that's a
like,
good memory. I
yeah,
totally forgot.
and
Yeah.
and and because there's two things there. A, it's like, man, this cat looks cool, and I'm like, I need to reach out to him, and then we did. But also the secondary thing out of that is, where did you shoot that photograph? And you shot it with John Nimchick, uh, and he had that studio down in Pioneer Square, and he had that freight elevator. So you did a photo shoot there. I saw you. I saw that. We started talking. There we are. And then I think you put me in contact with John, and I kind of co-opted him to do bounce board for me. So I've got some great photographs of that, where I'm as far in the corner as I can with a camera in that freight elevator, and then the light coming from the west through that window was just fantastic. But
Yeah.
that's I have moments of I'm proud of everything I do. I wouldn't release it if I wasn't proud of it and I didn't stand behind it. But there's moments where I'm just like, oh wow, I did that. And there's that scene where Faye is dressed up as Mother Earth, and you're crying and you're staring out, and then she comes from around the side, and the lighting is perfect, the image is perfect, and I'm just like, wow, I did that. But yeah, so for what I want someone who's honest and hopefully passionate. Um, I want someone that I don't want pretentious. I don't want um, I definitely don't want that. That's an instant turnoff. Like, if I have an immense sense of pride that most, if not all, of my film shoots, people have enjoyed them, and I always want them to enjoy them. When I hear stories about, oh, this guy was terrible, and someone walked away crying, and I'm like, why would you want to do that? It
Right.
just I don't understand. Like, this is supposed to be our expression as people, And I understand it can be strenuous, and it's there's timetables if you're into doing Hollywood or industry type films, and but you still should be able to have fun. And if you don't, then I don't know. If I had a situation where someone walked away crying, I would stop and rethink what I'm doing. You know,
Yeah.
um, but I want someone that's just an honest individual, a human individual, and who has an imagination. That's who I want. Um, that is got empathy and kindness to some degree, um, but and also is open minded. Like I've had people, I like to handwrite scripts, and I've had a couple of people like, oh, I don't want to read that, and I'm like, why? My penmanship is good, and 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 the cool thing was I had a we you know Faye and I have this really good friend who sadly passed away, and he transcribed my entire handwritten script. And
Wow.
you know that guy, he was just amazing. His name is Gary Parrish, and he was a really dear friend of ours. And he was an artist, and he did storyboards, taped them together in like a book.
Oh
And
yeah.
I didn't ask him to do any of this. He just did it. But I want to point that out because when you are passionate about something and you're kind about something and you have that honest, like, integrity, but like just drive, the vision to do something, people kind of have a tendency to come along in your wake, for lack of a better phrase. That's probably not the best way to put it, but like people are like, hey, I want to see where this goes. Like, Brother. So this the film I'm talking about is Brother. The whole script is handwritten in pencil, and Gary transcribed it into a typed script, digital file. He did the storyboards that we used on the set. The makeup artist I had, when I said, "Yeah, I can't pay you. I don't have any money, but I'm not getting paid either." It's like, so if, and I said, fully respect if you don't want to do it. At first, she was like, but the more she got into it, the more she really is like, yeah, I want to be there. I want to do this. And while those people were on set, like, all she was doing is just like dabbing powder on people to reduce glare. She didn't really do any intensive makeup.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, do you want to hold the boom pole for me? Do you want to run the slate? And so I kind of like brought everybody into things so they could, like, hey, I got to hold a slate or a boom pole on a film set, and people just love the hell out of that. And we had fun on that film set, and it was an intense subject matter. It's about displacement, it's about anger, it's about uh, prejudice, and it's about uh, outsiders, it's about mental health. It's so many different things that I didn't know going into the film until people started saying, "This is what I got out of this," and I'm just like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." So, but that's the long way around to say that I just kind of want honest everyday people that have an imagination, that have their own passions. And um, one of my pet peeves is, and I come from Oklahoma, so I got this a lot growing up from people around me, is this Philistine mindset. Like, what are you doing? What's that about? Like, they can't
Mm.
wrap their mind around, oh, you're creating something. Like, how do you think television and film happens? It's by
Yeah.
people who take a moment and say, what if we do this? And that's what really excites me, and those are the kind of people I gravitate towards.
Speaking of Oklahoma, how did the contrasting artistic landscapes of Tulsa and Seattle kind of shape your creative journey? And what lessons did each city teach you about filmmaking and independence?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Let me try. So Oklahoma is interesting because people are pretty self-absorbed. It's a great place as far as a landscape. It's a red state, so there's that, and that's a painful thing I'm not going to go into. But the landscape is beautiful. Like um, there's a place that has like castle walls. There's the only skyscraper that Frank Lloyd Wright ever designed and built is in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Hmm.
Um, and then if you have not seen, I would highly recommend going to Hulu and watching Reservation Dogs.
Hmm.
That was shot in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. Ethan Hawke was actually at the coffee shop where I did poetry just 2 days ago because he's working with the creator of Reservation Dogs, Sterling Harjo, on a new series.
Wow.
And the Cherokee Nation, of which I am a member, they are doing great. They're doing great things. They have an amazing studio north of Tulsa that I just visited about 3 or 4 months ago. It's got like a LED panel studio, like what they used in The Mandalorian. They've got two sound stages. It's immense what they're doing. But when I was doing film, it's just people were off in their own things. Like people are very self absorbed.
Yeah.
So I had free reign. Like um, my second narrative, I told you about the analog video films. The first one I shot at the coffee shop. The second one I shot in downtown Tulsa. And I, with a ragtag group of people, walked aimlessly downtown Tulsa all hours of the morning from probably about 2 in the morning till almost 4. Me still going to work at 7 in the morning the next
Wow.
day. Yeah. And we roamed around. We were never bothered. The police never bothered us. I think we encountered a jogger one time, but
Hmm.
we had free range of the city. And at that time, it was not as developed as it is now. But that's to our advantage. That's total DIY
Yeah.
and guerrilla filmmaking at its finest. Um, so it's just an idea, a group of like-minded people going out doing stuff with whatever equipment that you can grab together. Like I think that film shoot, I obviously had a tripod, I had a 8 millimeter analog camcorder. I put pantyhose over the lens to get like a diffusion effect.
Yeah.
Um, and we're talking like the 50 cent little pantyhose eggs that you get that like um, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say where I bought them because I'm not going to give free advertising to the place that I bought them, which is with the smiley face. I worked there for 5 years. I'm not giving them free advertising. Um, but yeah, so 50 cents for light diffusion or for a diffusion filter. And we had a literally a mag light. One person was holding a mag light on one side, and I had another person holding a Makita rechargeable light on the other side, and that was my lighting.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty good. But you could be left alone, and so you had this freedom. But also the bad thing about Tulsa is that, especially at that time, there was a film group, and they were doing some stuff, but it's just there was hardly anything going on. So you
Hmm.
didn't have peers, and when you did have peers, they're like, "How can we bring Hollywood here?" And I'm like, I wasn't interested in that. I'm interested in making the art and telling the story. So now, like, there's a huge film movement happening out of Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Tahlequah because of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Film Studios is just north of Tulsa, so it's like literally North Tulsa is where the airport is, so you can get off the plane and in 20 minutes be at Cherokee Film Studios.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's really something. And granted, they're trying to tell mostly Cherokee stories, but they're also open to working on other productions. So, and that's the place to do it. Moving to Seattle, I kind of expected a little bit more. And there was, like I said, I was able to go to a film lab and talk to people at Alpha Cine. I really have fond memories of um, 911 Media Arts Center because I don't know if you know this, but like 911 Media Arts Center and Northwest Film Forum were kind of the same entity at one point,
Mm,
and then they split off. And then 911 Media went to, I think, Harrison Street, and eventually got pushed out by the development there. And then they got shrunk down again, and they were in the Jack Straw building. So they were doing like workshops and working with kids, getting them into editing and stuff like that. So they had all these little workshops, and they had a little computer lab, and they did a lot of stuff there, and it was really awesome. But like, I'm sad that they're gone because I like the heart of who they were. Um, but interesting anecdote going back to Brother. With Brother, one of my actors had a shotgun microphone,
mm,
so he brought that. But I would go to 911 Media at Jack Straw Building on Roosevelt, and I would rent a 3 Lao light kit in a case, a boom pole, and the Canon 1014 XL Super 8 camera that I used for the production, which I later bought for $125 from them
nice.
because I was the only one that ever rented it. And, and so I said, well, if you want to buy it, I can talk to the board of directors. I'm like, sure. So I made an offer and I got it. And but so I had this joy of over probably about 7 or 8, maybe 9 or 10 different weekends. I would go there on a Friday. I would rent the gear for the weekend, go shoot at the coffee house in Redmond where our main set was, and then I would return it on Monday. And so yeah, that was that kind of connectivity. Like, but I was also disappointed in the fact that this this city should have a film co-op. Like, San Francisco and New York, they have film co-ops. Werner Herzog stole a 16 millimeter camera from the film co-op he worked at to do his first film. And but the idea of going in and like, okay, I'm giving you time for these projects for this co-op, and I get X amount of time with the equipment and possibly a studio space. Like, I am going to reach out to some places in and around Seattle and say, hey, let's chat about some ideas, and you tell me what you think of them. And one of them is, even though I'm not a film school person, I oddly like Seattle Film Institute. It's a good place, and I think the people are cool, and I like the building. But that's prime real estate for a film co-op. Like, yes, take people's tuition, but you have this space. What can you do more with it? So I'm the kind of person that says, I have an idea. What do you think? But also, I'm reaching out to like tomorrow. I was supposed to go to Tacoma. There's a production company called Zeta Maya, which is a
Hmm.
black-owned production company. They're doing a production lunch. Sadly, I can't make it, but for me, it's important to go out and reach out to different communities, and I want to see what they're doing. So I'm going to try to continue to connect with them. But being of indigenous heritage, I've been talking to people at Daybreak Star at Discovery Park, which, by the way, in case you didn't know, and if you might be interested in this, is they're doing their winter film showcase next week.
Oh,
I think it's next week. I'll send you information on this, but like, yes, they're doing an entire week film showcase with an opening and a closing, and it's all at Daybreak Star. And I'm hoping to connect with them. And like, if I'm going to invest money in a space to shoot, I want to give to a place where I want my money to go. Like, I want my money to go to interests that support different communities in different capacities, and whether it be um, black owned business or Asian business or indigenous business, I want to do that. I feel it's important. And so I have a meeting actually with a person who does the rentals for the space at Daybreak Star next Wednesday. So like again, like the old days of going to Alpha Cine, I'm gonna leave work and I'm gonna race across, from the east side to try to make it there to Discovery Park. But those kind of things, are what's different in Seattle is like you have a lot of different things going on. I think it could be better. Like I think the connectivity of the music scene and the way that music is appreciated could sometimes be better. Um, there's a lot of film, there's a lot of theater. It's very much a theater town, and that's great. Um, but I think there's just a lot of more ways that we can connect and build. And I think that's what I want to do is like a film set is a community, a band
Mm-hmm.
is a community. And so if you take that and and it's a challenge that I'm trying to discover how to do about diversifying because I do believe in diversity and equity. And how do I build on that without checking boxes? And the only way I know how to do, and I'm open to suggestions, but the only way I know how to do that is just to open doors wide open and look and listen, but also reach out and connect. And um, that's been really advantageous to what I've achieved so far. But I always want to keep building, you know.
Yeah.
So I wish that there's certain things that I wish Seattle could do a little bit differently, but there is a lot more opportunity. But it's kind of cool at the same time that now after I've left and haven't lived in Oklahoma since 2006 or 2000, yeah, 2006, that
Wow.
their communities are starting to build. So that's good to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes along the lines of like my next question is about today's film industry. And do you think there's still room for art driven cinemas, or has there been a demand for the marketable products overshadowing true storytelling? You know what I mean? That commercialized influence. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'll put it to you this: I make a joke that Michael Bay is my arch nemesis. Because he's he's the person that's making the explosion every second blockbuster
Yeah.
popcorn munching film, and that's what you know. I think people misinterpreted Scorsese when he said that Marvel films are not cinema, and what he's talking about is, are you going to curate in the Criterion Collection an Avengers film? Probably not.
Right.
But it doesn't mean they're not cinematic. So I'll give you an example. Like I joke about Michael Bay being my arch nemesis, but Armageddon, which is one of the most scientifically inaccurate science fiction films in cinema history. But there's that part where they're getting ready to launch on the shuttle and go out to the asteroid, and they start singing. One person starts singing "Leaving on a Jet Plane," and they all join in. That's cinema. That's art. So even though you have these popcorn munching, what we would probably call movies as opposed to cinema, out of all fairness, and it doesn't diminish one or the other, that's still a very beautiful cinematic artistic moment. And also, I want to bring to the conversation talking about David Lynch. When Twin Peaks: The Return came out, I don't know if you saw that or not. I recommend it. Are you a David Lynch fan?
I like some of his stuff. I don't really. It's funny when I see movies, I don't really associate it with who made it, who wrote it. I just see it because the trailer looked good or the story sounds interesting, that type of thing. Or someone said you got to see it.
Yeah.
That's usually what happens.
Well, I'm a big fan of Twin Peaks, even though the second season he kind of like the studio did their own thing and he kind of pulled away from it because of that. But he got free reign to do Twin Peaks: The Return. I think it was on Showtime,
Hmm.
and it's 18 one-hour episodes, and each one is more in-depth and twisted and bizarre than anything he could have done with the original Twin Peaks, and people loved it. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, the general public, a good portion of it, is is enjoying what is basically an 18-hour avant-garde film because it is really out there
Hmm.
and some of the most beautiful cinematography. In fact, I want to say that Christopher Nolan somehow was inspired by there's a mushroom cloud, not to be too many spoilers, but in Twin Peaks: The Return, I'll say no more. That was and I know it was a digital production, but it's gorgeous.
Hmm.
And I think it kind of inspired, don't hold me to this, but I think it kind of inspired how they did that with Oppenheimer, which I still have not seen.
Oh, see
But
that I did see.
yes, yes. But the thing is, um, art is everywhere. Like
Hmm.
even the cheesiest of jingles on a commercial, there's an art to that. Um, and art doesn't have to be artsy fartsy or highfalutin or anything like that. But like at the same time, I wish a lot of more people were open to it. But things like what David Lynch does kind of sneaks art into where people can maybe sample a little bit and then they learn a little bit more. You know, the average person, like speaking of Nolan, uh, Faye was teaching music in Poland. I joined her in 2019.
Oh, that's cool.
17? Yes, 2017. And I had bought the tickets for the last screening at Seattle Cinerama for Dunkirk in 70 millimeter projection. So we had just come back from Poland.
Wow.
And then we watched this movie projected in celluloid, shot in celluloid, and it's a gorgeous film. And it's heart wrenching. And I remember the credits are rolling and my mouth is just open and there's tears in my eyes. And I'm at the edge of my seat and I'm going, and people in front of us got up. It's like, so we gonna we're gonna meet next weekend for a barbecue, and I'm just like, you soulless bastard. Like, but the thing is, that's the movie going public. That's the Michael Bay public. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I like Avengers films. Scorsese said, in the right situation, I would direct an Avengers film. But what he was talking about, and people interpreted what he was saying, is that there is cinema. You curate cinema. I'm concerned about that. These films, they're fun, but are we going to be watching those 100 years from now? Like there's a reason
Yeah.
why Shakespeare is still read. There's a reason why Dickens is still read. Um, yeah, you just have to, and it's okay. It's nothing against the Avengers films, and that's wasn't what Scorsese was saying. But like, I think there's art everywhere, and we can inject it in there. But I also would like to see more people kind of like, and I do see this. I see little examples of it everywhere where people are like, people going back to vinyl. Gen Z
Hmm.
buying a vinyl record and putting it on a turntable speaks volumes about their musicality and their listening abilities. And I think that's important and I think that's beautiful. So, uh, another thing that's really cool is Gen Z, like old technology and like DV cams and old, that's saying they're reaching for something and they're receptive.
Hmm.
And, but I also think every generation needs to be more receptive. So hopefully things like we keep ejecting art in there, then we create a situation where people learn even if they don't know they're learning. People are not always receptive to learning, but I think it's important. I'm trying to learn. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a place for art in everything.
I feel like if you're not learning, you're kind of dying. You're just not moving,
Exactly.
you
I
know?
agree.
What speaking of Gen Z, if we go back a little bit, how did the 90s indie film movement influence your work? And do you think we're seeing a resurgence of that a little bit, the DIY spirit?
In small increments, I wish it was more. Like,
Hmm.
so there's still a lot of stuff from the 90s I haven't seen. I've never seen Pi, which is Aronofsky, I think.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I have not seen it either. But films like Clerks, and then which is it's a bit slapdash, but I think that's kind of like easy, low hanging fruit for indie film in the '90s. There's a lot of stuff from the '90s I haven't seen. I've never seen Reservoir Dogs. I've just never, and I'm not tremendously huge on Tarantino.
Hmm.
Um, he does have an art of taking the cinema he grew up with and implementing it into his films, which doing an homage is an art form in itself.
Oh yeah.
But uh, the things that influenced me in the 90s were oddly music videos and music, even though it's kind of a weird blur. Um, had a bad marriage at the time, and so there's a lot of stuff about the 90s that I didn't really like. So I'm going back musically and rediscovering some stuff. It was also a really weird, grim time for a lot of reasons, and but the cinema, like, um, a good, I think it was 90s, Lost Highway. Speaking of David Lynch and
Mm.
things, but uh, the one thing that really drove me as an indie artist was Sci-Fi Channel of all things had this really great show called Exposure, and it was just an hour-long show that was I can't remember who hosted it first, but later it was hosted by Lisa Marie, who was for a short period of time married to Tim Burton,
Oh,
and
okay.
not Lisa Marie Presley, but a different
Okay.
Lisa
So a
Marie.
different.
Yes, yes, I should probably, yeah. But so that at the time was the cutting edge of like indie cinema, and they had everything from stop motion animation to puppetry to the digital technology at the time, and it was some very innovative storytelling. And then I think towards the end of the decade, uh, IFC Film Channel and Sundance Film Channel started appearing, and I got to start there. There definitely was a feel to how films were approached at the time, but I think it was because things were new. You notice in music, like at the beginning of a decade, there's always something that happens. Like uh, beginning of the '60s was like the British invasion, and uh, then and then the ending of a decade too. Like the ending of the '60s was like uh, the flower child movement and the psychedelic movement, and then in the '70s it was arena rock, and then leading up to punk and disco, diametrically opposed to each other, but there it was, which led to the '80s new wave, and then '90s had grunge. So there's always these cycles that happen, um, but it's usually when something's new that it's fresh and all the ideas are happening. Like speaking of grunge and speaking of the '90s, if I were to create a catalog right now, Pearl Jam, what would I include in it? 10, the first album, maybe the second one, but really the first one. And anything after that, maybe, but I would always go and listen to the first one. And, but, just things like that. So when something's fresh, that's when the ideas happen. And it's like, punk rock was not meant to last. It was meant to be a flash in the pan. That's what defines it. It's intrinsic to its qualities, right? So maybe the '90s indie film scene was not meant to last. Maybe it was meant to evolve, but like everything is cyclical, so it comes back.
Yeah. I was just
So
gonna bring that up.
yeah. So um, what I'm seeing in small doses is this pioneering spirit, right? People are looking to deal, and there's so many videos. Like I love the fact that there's these videos of people recreating like a Blade Runner cafe scene in their garage, and it's all about layers and textures. Like, yeah, it's styrofoam if you look at it, and it
Hmm.
looks like crap if you're on the set, but because you've layered it, it you know, cinema is smoke and mirrors at its basic element. That's all it is. We're magicians, and that's what I love about that. It's like we are magicians as filmmakers. Georges Méliès, the first science fiction film, he literally was a magician that embraced cinema and created all these things. He had this beautiful studio that was like a glorified greenhouse, and it had panels on the top where he could open the panels and let light in for natural lighting for his stage settings.
Hmm.
But he pioneered stop motion and dissolves and special effects, all in 1903.
Wow.
So, but he was literally a magician, and so yeah, I'm starting to see little bits of it, and it is different because of the technology. But
Hmm.
people are like, hey, You don't need to do all this. You can just do this. And you see it in Instagram Reels, you see it on YouTube, and people are just finding ways to do things without spending a lot of time, spending a lot of money, but still achieve the same thing. And I think that's awesome.
Makes me think of talking about musicians, magicians. That's I think that's one of the first things when you start for people who are getting into film, and you know, and I don't know, I've always had this mindset of when they're watching something, you're like, how did they do that? And you're starting to break it down, and was that practical, or nowadays is it practical or was it digital? you know,
And that's
and
really cool that people are still using, and even more so now, using practical effects.
oh yeah,
The big thing that influenced me as a filmmaker was quite literally Star Wars. And so little Captain, wanted, was believed that this was happening. Uh, in a Somewhere it was happening. It was real. But at the same time, I knew it wasn't, and there was a behind the scenes, and I enjoyed the behind the scenes as much as I did the actual film, while still little Captain's mind thinking that Luke Skywalker was out there somewhere.
yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Like,
I do love behind the scenes. Sometimes I'll watch that first, and then I'll
yeah,
watch the film.
yes,
What's now you've built connections through Blue November, Micro Film Fest, and
yes.
beyond. What are the key elements of fostering an authentic and supportive indie film community?
Again, I'm going to go back to honesty. And the reason why I bring that up is honesty of intent, honesty of character, passion. Let's speak in terms of the film festival. So, in 2003, as a result, an impetus of a lot of things I had experienced from spending, at that time I'd only entered like two or three film festivals and spent like $100. And I'm like, wow, that's gets expensive really quickly. And I'm like, but why? You spent all this money and time on your film. So I created the idea of free to attend because you're sharing the art. Free to submit. All you have to do is pay for the postage. Send me your film and I'll review it. And what I wanted to do, and our mantra and our slogan was the overlooked and the unseen. I want to see something that nobody else has seen before. I want to show stuff that other film festivals don't show. And so Faye was my co-director, and we molded this idea uh, in Tulsa for 3 years, and then we moved it out here to Seattle. And so the premise is I don't care if the sound quality and the acting quality is terrible, but if your passion is so intense, you wanted to do this so bad that it comes through and all that stuff kind of peels away from me. I kind of feel sorry for people. It's like, oh yeah, that pulled me out. And I'm like, why? The story is still there. There's a story, slight digression, of this
Mm-hmm.
young kid who loved Raiders of the Lost Ark so much that in the 80s, right after the film, and he lived in Mississippi. And I think Vanity Fair did this really great article, roughly around, I want to say it's about 2005, maybe, that they did this article, um, chronicling this kid. He wanted to be Indiana Jones so bad from Raiders of the Lost Ark that he did a shot by shot camcorder version of the film so he could be Indiana Jones. And they did everything except for the airplane scene. That's the only thing they didn't do. And years later, they did that and added it to it. But the fun thing was, like, they they got scolded and uh, put under watch for a while because the scene, the bar fight at the beginning, they actually set a bar on fire in one of the parent one of their the den in one of their parents' houses. And so they said, okay, we need supervision here. And so the only thing they didn't do was the airplane. Like, they actually had an old derelict truck in a field that was towed by a tractor, and so he did the whole uh, bullwhip hanging from the end of the truck, and he was drug across the ground and everything. But over the course of the production, like they started to age out and they started to go through puberty, and there was an actual love triangle between the actors. You know, this one kid loved the girl, and but she was into this guy, and so there's a whole drama. But when people watch this finished film, the one thing that comes through, and the reason why I bring it up, is that his passion for being this character was so intense that the fact that 1 minute his voice is prepubescent, and in the next one it's after puberty, didn't matter to people. Like, so at every screening, people were just like, they just loved it. And so I would rather see a film that just the story's there, it's unique, and someone was so passionate about it. And if the sound's not perfect, I'm okay, I'm forgiving. The problem that I experienced towards the waning years of the festival, and we did it for 10 years and we decided to call it quits. And we saw a lot of different things. One year it was all H.P. Lovecraft inspired fan films. One year it was I started getting a lot of films from India, and it was through like I think it was an aggregator that was like doing all these films. Like they had all these different filmmakers, and then they submitted to different festivals. And I saw some gorgeous films that just left my jaw on the floor. And I saw heartbreaking films, I saw funny films, I saw really in depth and beautiful films. But towards the end of it, I started seeing, which is something we're seeing now in the indie film scene, and what you can go on to Amazon right now and see if you dig for it. And it's like, okay, that film was really popular. I'm going to make a film in the same vein. And so one year I got this film that was a complete rip-off of Memento. It looked good. It sounded good. The acting was good. The lighting was great. Everything was great. But it was a ripoff. It wasn't original. I didn't show it. I'm like, that's not what I want. I want originality. I want passion. And so um, I think we're kind of coming back around to like creativity. I'm starting to see a little bit more of that, but like still every once in a while on Facebook groups, you'll see like, okay, we got an audition, right? Imagine X Files and Tomb Raider combined. And
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's still not original.
Right. Right.
But from a production standpoint, it's marketable. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it. So and again, try not to be hyper critical of things, but like if that's what you want to do, if you want to make a product and that makes you happy, then go after your bliss. If that's your bliss, then great. But for me, I'm just like, no, I would rather have the wacky, the weird. If it works, it does. That's great. If it doesn't, then that's also great. But I would rather show the weird and wacky than the product.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question, was what advice would you give to filmmakers who prioritize artistic vision over commercial success, knowing that it may isolate them from the mainstream opportunities or film festivals, if you will?
It's really funny you say that because there's a lot of things I'm reading from people from everything from Roger Deakins or David Lynch, where now granted they have a leg up, right? They've been in the industry and they've had to pay their dues. So now they're in a place where they can say that. So they have the privilege to say that. I am going to be art first, and I'll tell you why. Is the fact that um, if you approach it as because a lot of these same people are saying stick to your vision. That's what they're saying, and I don't disagree with that. And I'm glad that they're saying it. Is we need more original stuff. I was just talking to Faye earlier about how one of the co-writers of Back to the Future, um, people are saying, when are we going to get Back to the Future 4? And his answer was, fuck you.
Yeah.
And I agree with him. We
Yeah.
don't need Back to the Future 4.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, if you believe in it, that's where you need to go. That's the honest answer, always. But I will say, you also have to realize that you may not reach people, and that's okay too. For the longest time, I had a hard time with that. It's like I want my stuff to be seen by everybody, but it's not a popularity contest. I've grown to like fall into the wisdom of like I may just be a small factor as opposed to a big factor. I may be a small factor in a larger scheme of things, and I'm okay with that. But I'm still going to do what I want to do because that's my bliss. But realize the reality of that situation. If you follow your bliss and your art, it's not going to be received by everybody, but it might. Let's speak in the vernacular of the times. One of my favorite memes is someone somewhere in a boardroom said, "How about tornadoes and sharks?" I've never seen it, but apparently it's a hit. But no idea is a bad idea, right?
Right,
But,
right.
and
Well, yeah. Here's the thing that I always think about in the back of my mind is how do I not emulate that something that's already been made?
yeah,
Because we're like surrounded constantly with films and movies and commercials and ideas and concepts and stories and remakes. And it's like, well, how do I come up with an original idea? What kind of advice would you give someone to do that? Because they're overwhelmed.
I'm not as avid a reader as I would like to be, but I would recommend reading, but also being receptive. So I don't read as many books as I'd like to read, and I'm trying to change that. But I read a lot of stuff. Like, um, there's interesting anecdotes throughout history. Like, history sometimes is more amazing than fiction, you know? And so you can take a little something, like, I'll give you an example of something that I recently learned. During the 50s in England, there was this thing called the Teddy Boys and the Teddy Girls. And they were counterculture. The girls wore trousers, and the whole movement, both Teddy Boys and Teddy Girls, was Edwardian. So they took, like, they're wearing these Edwardian style jackets and Edwardian style slacks, and they listened to jazz and, kind of the precursor of what became the 60s movements and the mods.
Hmm.
But it was defiance, it was counterculture. And so I actually have a pitch Bible for an idea where I kind of wrote a character that's based on that. So you don't have to do it directly, but you can let that influence come in, and then you can take it and chisel it in however many ways you want to. But just be receptive and listen. Listen to other people talk. Like when I go out in public, I'm listening and watching and observing things and um, going back to that first narrative I did on analog video. It's called Adam and Yvette. The whole film came from one line that I misinterpreted from a friend of mine. She said something entirely different, but I heard, "I like the ocean sky." So I wrote that down. And then it spiraled out into the script that I wrote. And so there's a scene where that's featured, but it also set the tone for the poetic narrative and the poetic dialogue in that film. And so it makes that film unique. So I just say, listen, watch, be receptive. Um, Sometimes it takes getting over ourselves. Sometimes it takes humility. Sometimes it takes swagger. But like at the same time, if we just listen, you know, read, watch films. Like I'm also not as well viewed. There's so many films I still haven't seen yet that I need to see. There's so many books I need to read, but I'm working on it. And
I
that's the
have a
thing. It's like,
confession. I have never seen Jaws.
you know, it's a cultural phenomenon, but like I don't think that your life is over if you've never seen
No,
that.
I
So,
don't think so.
but
But
like
yeah.
I'll give you a confession. I've never seen Magnificent Seven Samurai,
Mm.
which inspired Magnificent Seven,
Hmm.
which I've also not seen. So there's two films that I need to see. That's kind of quintessential. But the thing is, there's no shame. Like, I think we've moved into this thing in society where we're trying to shame less, and I think that's good.
Yeah.
So, um, but at the same time, I feel I would be, uh, I would benefit from watching those films. So they're on my list. But my suggestion is like just be receptive, just listen. When you go to a place, watch, observe, look at people's behaviors, look at things that go on, but also learn and be receptive to those little anecdotes. Like sometimes when you talk about someone, hey, what do you think about this? And they look at you like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But it's something to you that's like, oh, this is just like I do musical playlists and I know a fair amount, not everything, but a fair amount of different people. And people joke like, oh yeah, Captain knows like what pants the guy was wearing and what guitar he was playing at the time and what studio that was recorded in. And that's not exactly true, but I do know a lot of details because I'm receptive to them, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my advice is just be receptive to anything and everything around you because like Jarmusch, the language is good. Jarmusch, Jim Jarmusch, he said that everything is copying. It's just, but it gets filtered through you, right? So I don't think everything's copying, and I don't think that everything's been done before. But we're still doing all the plot elements that were designed by the Greek playwrights. There's like 12 different plot elements that still adhere to everything we do today, right? But how I do it and how you do it are going to be two different things. Uh, I think it was uh, Tchaikovsky that said, a book read by 1,000 different people is 1,000 different stories. And I'm paraphrasing, that's not the exact quote, but like basically, we could read the same book and get something different out of it. But
Yeah.
the thing is, be receptive and then channel that through you.
I always had a saying to myself that it's always about perception because perceptions are always going to be different depending on who you talk to. So, how has your perspective changed over the years, and what excites you most about revisiting your old work that you have that you still want to develop and digitize into creating new projects?
Well, I because I approach it as art art in general, I approach it as an art piece, an artwork. Um, I see it as indicative of the time. Like um, again, and I don't want to criticize anybody for like, oh yeah, that was a first film or something like that. And every time they do like a retrospective on, oh, here's George Lucas's first film he did when he's in college, um, and people commented about like, well, how terrible it is or stuff like that. Oh, it's a first film. I That's one of my pet peeves too because like that was a moment in time. That was something that came out honestly at that time. Same thing for music, art. You're just seeing a different, like we're constantly evolving. So you're just seeing a part of the evolution of the person. I'm not saying that like my stuff is brilliant or it's great, but I stand by my first film I did in 1991. I stand by that first narrative I did in 2003 on analog video. I stand by Brother I did in 2012, which is the last film I actually did. And I stand by Water from the Mountain that we did in, according to you, 2008, 2009, I think when I finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe stand by your work. Like if you're not 100% on it, then don't put it out there. But but if you put it out there, stand by it. Be proud of it. Even if it doesn't garner the attention or even if it doesn't um, get all the likes on whatever social platform you're trying to utilize, but uh, stand by the work. And if there's a lesson to learn from it, sure. But like, yeah, stand by that work.
That's good advice. I think when we did Pyrocene, it was only 10 minutes long. And I was like, no one's going to watch this. No one's going to like this. And my wife is like, well, we need to have a cast and crew. And, because it was just kids and their families come and watch it. And I'm like, really? It's only 10 minutes long. You want to rent a theater for that? She's like, yeah. I said, okay. So we rented a theater, and then we sent it off to festivals. And I was like, I just don't know. It's only 10 minutes. I don't think it's gonna win anything. And we won. We won awards. We won. The girl who's never acted before, won Best Actor, Child Actor.
Yeah,
And and it's like you can make all these excuses in the back of your head, like, well, that's it was something. But just like what you said, it's like, where were you when I did this? Stand by your work. Don't be ashamed of it. Just do it, and then
yeah.
move forward, right? You don't let it weigh you down. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. Well, also too, successes are can be small or big. Like I think it's a sad thing that in this world, and especially this country, we measure success by how much money you have, how many cars you have, things like that, popularity and stuff. But like the fact that if you sat down right now and wrote a script, you've achieved a success. You've done more than most people will do in their life. And if you actually commit it to film and get a finished product, even more so. But one of the best memories I have is speaking of that first narrative film, Adam and Yvette. After it was done, good friend of mine did the editing on it. Friend of mine at the time, he lent some of his music to it. We went to my friend's apartment, and he had one of those. You remember those big projection screen TVs that are the size of a car? He
Yeah,
had one of those, and he was really proud of it. So I still have a VHS copy of this film because I uh, transferred it from the 8 millimeter video to VHS for a festival or something.
nice.
We went over to his apartment and watched the film for the first time together as a group. Everybody that was in it um, bought pizza and 2 6 packs of beer and just sat down and watched the film. And that was the first time that I saw it in its entirety, edited form, with your mates, with your cast and crew and friends. And so
Hmm.
that's a good memory. I love that. But like successes can be uh, multi-leveled and multifaceted. Yeah. Would I like to make a living as a filmmaker? Yeah, I would. I'd like to wake up every day and just go out into a studio and just do the next thing. Is that a reality? Don't know. I'm still trying. I'm not going to give up. But from for a lot of people, it's going to be like, no, this is going to. And I hate when people say, "Oh, that's a nice hobby." Art is never a hobby. Art is an expression of our innermost self, and that's sacred. And so hobbies are for stamp collecting, but um, and yeah, I will be hypercritical of those things, um, but no, like I think it's the journey of continuously trying to achieve whatever success works for you. And like you said, that's a really good win. The fact that you went to a festival and you won, and that's incredible and that's awesome. And I want to say congratulations on that, although it's probably much belated. Um, but yeah, I think that's important. Like, I want to see more human interaction and human community and just humanity, um, even if it is industry. Like, and I think the industry is working on that, but I want to see more of that because uh, I think that's a good example. Is I think everybody on Ted Lasso as a television production had a blast, but they're good people, they're good writers, and uh, that inspires me and it makes me happy and it makes me enjoy it more when I watch it. At first, it's like I don't like sports, so at first I was like I don't want to watch this thing about football, and then
I've never
and
seen
then
it.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, highly recommended. You
there's a
you you
lot of
will
things I haven't seen. Yeah.
yes, you will binge watch it probably once you start it, but it covers everything from mental health and it's feel good and it's definitely the thing that we needed during the pandemic, which is when most of it was shot. So yes, I'd highly recommend that. But that's the beautiful thing about where art and the industry can come together and create something that is more than the sum of its parts. Like on the outside, it's just a television show, but it reaches deeper than that. It touches the soul and it touches the people, and that's why it was such a favorite. Um, and yeah, I think that's we're going in different directions, and I see a lot of that, and that makes me happy. Like the same people who did the writing for Ted Lasso have done another show called Shrinking. Same thing. It's got heart. It's got depth. It talks about loss and grief, but it's also funny, so it makes us laugh, and that's human.
Interesting. What do you think the next decade holds for indie cinema? And how can, other than what you've said already, how can filmmakers adapt to stay true to their vision and trying to reach audiences in a new way?
Well, we have the internet, and that's kind of like one of the experiments that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to like try to see what I can do on like I'm changing a lot of my social media platforms. Like I'm on Blue Sky. I'm shifting away from a lot of the norms. And again, a lot of political stuff that I'm not going to go into, but I'm shifting away from things like Google and Meta and embracing. I'm going to be revisiting Vimeo. I'll be looking at Daily Motion, which is the YouTube of Europe, um, and doing blogging. And like the funny thing about social media is people think, oh, everybody lives on social media, but it's still, as far as an artist is concerned, people still tell you all that does is bring people back to your website where you have a blog. That's where you share your stuff. Will Wheaton is a good example of that. He has come back full circle and is focusing on his blog
Hmm.
because that's where he started years ago. And so I'm going to experiment with that. And I think it's for someone like me who wants to focus on art, it's very difficult. Like you have to know those people, you have to work in the industry, and I'm trying to open my mind that's to other industry things and see what are we doing locally, what are we doing over here, and what are we doing over there, and trying to keep an open mind while still holding true to my beliefs and my the way I do things. But I think I don't know what the next decade will hold. I hope it's going to be more community driven. And I think right now, where a lot of these social media platforms, because people are leaving and other artists are doing that, they're going to things that are more community and niche oriented.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping people will build on that. I'm hoping that we kind of get back to a place where um, perhaps our movies and our television, like let's have the big stuff, let's have the entertaining stuff, but like let's have a renaissance. Like we can have a renaissance anytime we want. Um, there's more and more people talking about here's all you need to do this. Here's how they did this. Here's how we did this. And that helps other people. So I think we're just going to kind of think we're already doing the community thing inadvertently, whether we realize it or not. And so, but it's also saturated, right? So, but I found this really great video where this guy was just talking about, and the audio is perfect. But he's like, here's how I shoot videos and films by myself. And it just shows a car at a gas station with a sunset. And he just walks in and you see him talking. And he had set the camera up and it's just so casual and soft spoken. And I'm like, I like this
Hmm.
because what he's doing is like, here's how I do something. I'm sharing it with you. And it felt like he was in the room. And so it's going back to the human thing. It's like, I think people are seeing the inhumanity that's all around us right now. And they're doubling down on humanity. They're looking for new outlets. So I think we as artists and filmmakers and writers and poets and musicians, we need to build on that. So yeah, you can still tell the entertaining story, but pull the Gene Roddenberry approach. Like you're going to start telling morality tales within the context of your entertainment. One of my
Which I
favorite,
love. Yeah.
yeah, one of my favorite stories is when Nichelle Nichols walked into Gene Roddenberry's office and she goes, I just realized what you're doing. You're doing morality plays. And he looked at her and goes, because he constantly fought censors every day. Yeah.
They knew.
Oh, they knew.
Interesting.
Yeah, but some of the stuff was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
I just rewatched an episode. I think it's called Face of the Enemy, where they encounter the Romulans for the first time. And there's a moment, and I didn't realize how significant it was, but I saw an article about it, and I wanted to watch it again. There's a moment where the navigator is relieved, and Kirk orders Uhura to take control of the navigation. Sulu pauses and looks over at her. And the reason why that's significant is this is 1966. So you got civil rights movement, you got the Cold War, you got racism, all this stuff happening at one time. And here's a future where you have a Russian, an Asian, you have a black woman on the Enterprise, on the
Hmm.
bridge as a commissioned officer, and she's capable. And that's what inspired Whoopi Goldberg to go into acting, is seeing Uhura on Star Trek, seeing Nichelle Nichols. So that's inspiring to me. And like, how what is my placement in all this? So that inspires me, and it's like, so that's going to change how I do storytelling. Is how do I bring all of this in and bring all these cross cultural human elements? And that's what I want to do.
Captain, what, from your perspective of being an artist, director, writer, a poet, what is the most constructive criticism that you've ever received in your career?
Um, let's see. Uh, Honestly, I don't always listen to criticism, um, because I'm kind of
Constructive, though, meaning it was good.
yeah. Sometimes people say my stuff is a little too long, uh, and I wish I had a good example. Like there's been parts in my history where I didn't listen. There's parts where I did listen, and so to give you a good example, I could not. But I can give you a good example where I was defiant. But I had someone once tell me when they watched Brother, my last film, it's like, that's great, but if I wanted to watch something like that, I'd go to an archive. And what they were talking about is the celluloid, the Super 8 of it. And I just thought that was just interesting. I'm like, but the story is still there. Doesn't matter how it's shot. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you've heard of stories about people going finding the old Fisher Price kids cameras that shoot in black and white and doing films with them, and
Hmm.
people used a backup camera on one of their cars, and Soderbergh shooting with iPhones and various things. Um, if anything, um, that taught me to be more defiant about like I'm going the right path. But
Interesting.
uh, yeah, so but people, I guess what criticism has taught me is like if I really believe in what I'm doing, then I'm going to stick to that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I should not listen. So when I've received criticism, I've taken it in, and I think there's been a couple times. The example is escaping me, but it's like I know there's been a couple times where someone said, "What if we do this?" And it's like, okay, let's try that.
Hmm.
And I want to be that kind of director that, okay, at the end of the day, captain in command, my decision, but still come to me with suggestions, like still come to me with things. So if criticism does anything, it says it reminds me to be humble and listen, even if I choose not to do it, but not just to discard it. Um, but sometimes when you go to the trouble and you've got all these pages with all these notes and stuff like that, you've already done a lot of work there. And granted, when you get to editing, it may not work, or it does. But if someone says, "What if we do this?" Okay, tell me about it. It's being receptive. So if criticism does anything, it just teaches me to keep being receptive to other people around me because, again, that's going back to the community that, for lack of a better phrase, that you've created in this moment for this film production. And you've come together, and it's like all these people are in it, and all these people are there and they're present. So if they say, what about this? Um, Going back to Brother, we had this young kid. So we had a scene with coffee house patrons. And it was a mother and a son. And ironically, tomorrow uh, or Saturday, I'll get to see the same mother and son um, at an event in Snohomish. But like the uh, I was just trying to bring people in, so I he was just an extra. And I said, "Hey, come over. How's that look?" Because I had the camera set up, and I had a person that was working as cinematographer. He goes, "Why don't you try this? That would be better." And I looked at it, and I'm like, "Oh, you're right." So I think we shot it both ways, but like, yeah, he had good instincts. He had good eye, and so um, I don't think I answered that very well, but like that's all I've got.
No, that's good. That's good. I think it's when I think of my peers who are filmmakers, we tend to enter into the film domain as a genre. Let's look at a genre. Which genre do I like? You know, a lot of like horror. They're focused on horror. They want to make things like that. Um, the what would you say your films are? Is there a genre, or is it just more of an artistic flavor, or is it like what realm are you going for? Is it drama?
Um, Cinematic poetry.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, because I do poetic dialogue, I do visual poetry. The funny thing is, and it's hilarious that you brought this up, is the fact that the whole reason why I got into film in the first place is I wanted to like I knew that I was never going to be flying through space in a starcraft, but I could do that in film. I could put myself in a starship in film, and there I am. So that was the closest I'll ever get to doing that. But uh, so obviously, science fiction is a first love and an inspiration, but I have done very little science fiction. So, and that's the funny thing. And so, a lot of stuff I'm writing now is science fiction based, and that's what I'm going to be producing next. But those will be the first films after all this time, after 33 years of filmmaking. Those will be my first science fiction films, which is the entire reason why I got into it in the first place. So,
You've been warming
um,
up.
yeah, but if I had to define what I do now, and even with the science fiction ones, I'm doing cinematic poetry, um, where I'm incorporating like you don't have to tell a story in the same way, but you can still tell mostly the same story, but just do this a little differently. Like you know, um, one of the scripts I wrote actually has a coffee house on board, and a person who is a security officer has an informant who is a beat poet in that coffee house on board that station, and gets it delivers his information by reading out of a chat book. So same thing that has happened in spy novels and
Mm-hmm.
spy stories and so many different detective stories. He's an informant, but instead of just delivering stuff in an alleyway or in a dark corner, he's in a coffee house delivering it via poetry, quite literally. So
Nice.
things like that. That's what I like. But cinematic poetry is how I describe what I do.
I love it. Are you what's happening in the near future for you? What are you working on? I know you said you just got your Panasonic camera. You got three
Yes,
lenses.
yes.
Do you have a
So
favorite focal length?
I don't, not on that
Okay.
camera anymore. Yeah. Um, but no, like I'm still going to be shooting Super 8. I'm going to start diving into 16 at some point. But like now I'm at the place where I've got to get this laptop going and start playing around with that. So a lot of learning curve with the camera and the laptop and DaVinci Resolve. Um, but I also still have an old laptop that has Adobe Premiere CS4 on it, and it has FireWire because I still have a Panasonic DVX 100 because
Oh wow.
I have a bunch of DV tapes for a feature film project that I shot a very long time ago, and it finally needs to see the light of day. So
Yeah.
I've got my work cut out for me. So a lot of rescanning some films into 4K, getting stuff developed, bringing stuff to light, but also trying to move towards the future. It's like I don't have a shortage of scripts, but I've got about two or three that I'm looking at right now. One I'm actually going to shoot on my mobile phone. Uh, yeah. Again, it's something that I would have never done like 5, 6 years ago. But again, being encouraged to have an open mind and also trying to evolve and get over myself. Um, yes. Then the GH4. I was never big on digital SLRs, and here I am looking at, uh, I have a digital SLR now. So there's a film script I have. I do just recently, as about 2 months ago, received the storyboards. It's my first paid uh, um, artist. I paid an artist to do the storyboards, a good friend of
Nice.
ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she did some amazing storyboards and kind of mixed media, and so that's going to be the basis for what we do next. Um, I was actually going to shoot that at there's a place at Seattle Center called M5, but unfortunately that it's the old KCTS building.
Mm.
But I think that closes in March, so that's one of the
Oh,
reasons why I'm going to Daybreak Star and talking to them about renting a space, just a place where I can set up, um, have some lights, make some, do a little bit of set design, but also be able to break down quickly and move on. And that's the biggest challenge for me right now. Is like I need people and I need a place. So always on the, always got my ear and eyes open for that. But
yeah.
yeah, so that's the next step. It's like just solidifying those things, and then I've got the script, I've got most of the costuming, got the concept design, production design, I've got storyboards. Just need to commit it to film.
Awesome. What's when it comes to film technology, is there anything that you really appreciate film tech wise? I mean, it sounds like that you were kind of stubborn and you're starting to open up a little bit. But is there anything that you're like, wow, that looks really cool, or I'd like to try that, or
Well, I've never been anti-digital because it's like that's our Star Trek universe that we want, right? So I'm
yeah, yeah.
old, but I'm also new. But no, I like the idea. I like the photographic principles of everything. I like how there's people coming back. People are starting to shoot still uh, film again, as opposed they're doing that more than celluloid film, motion picture film, I should say.
Hmm.
Um, but that aesthetic and that work ethic is coming into digital productions too. And I just like the innovative, practical effects that people are using, and that inspires me. But like tech wise, let's see. I'm kind of excited about these little tiny, like not earbud, little microphones that they have now that are
The lav mics, yeah.
yeah, that technology is getting really good, and that's exciting to me. I'm kind of excited about the I'm trying not to get down the rabbit hole for cost reasons because like I
Oh
don't want
yeah.
to sit there and have all my paycheck go into this, but I like the accessories you can get. Like you can build a cage around uh, uh, a camera, and
Hmm.
I think a small rig. You got the little handles and stuff like that. Um, like you can take it to an immense level, but like I like just little nuances. I like having like okay, I can put a handle on here and I can accessorize with this, and so I like that.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
I don't need a lot, but um, just some of those little nuances. But I don't really have like a particular piece of tech that like really reaches out and grabs me. Um,
Until you
yeah,
start working on DaVinci Resolve.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So here's the big question for you. What's your thoughts on AI?
I think AI is a good tool if you're. Well, I'll quote what a lot of people said. I want AI to do my laundry. I want I want AI to find a cure for cancer.
Hmm.
I want AI to detect cancer before it appears. But the AI artwork, it's kind of like early CGI and stuff like that. It's just everybody was all in, and it looks so fake. Like when you overdo it, if you do it in a textural sense, like one of the things that I might look at for some older analog video platforms is they have up-resing software that uses AI to build it up into a
Mm,
higher resolution.
yeah.
That's a tool. It's not the art. That's the key factor there.
Yeah.
I am open to using a tool. That's how a lot of people are starting to rebuild old photographs. And I'm like, okay, you can either have the photograph or you don't. And AI has been around for a long time. Your Siri on your phone, if you have an iPhone, that's AI.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they were using algorithms and data crunching to, well, when they discovered the black hole, they crunch all that data and they build the image, right? That's AI. So I don't have a problem with it being utilized as a tool. What I have a problem with is when it starts, and I'm really glad that a lot of um, the strikes and everything like that have worked towards securing um, anti-AI rights for actors and animators. And I don't know the extent. I've not been up with the most recent thing, but like at the height of it, I was like very aware of that and watching it. And I'm like, that's really great. Like they need to do that strike. And I'm glad that so many people, like we watched Stephen Colbert, like they went off the air, supported the writers. And that's what you need to do because, like, even though I'm not an industry person, doesn't mean that I don't realize the fact that that is the livelihood of someone doing their art. And that's what's important. But I don't have I don't have a lot of love for AI as art. I don't want to see the images. I don't want to see the video. It does not intrigue me. I don't some people are like, oh yeah, everybody's going to be replaced as actors in like 10 years. And I'm like, but why would you want to watch that?
Right.
Because you can do all the algorithms you want, but if we going back to science fiction always tells us a story that there's always the human element that will always surprise you in the end. And if you're all AI, you're going to miss that, but it'll come back around.
Yeah. It's I've heard different versions. It's very similar to what you just said too about art is that there's an essence of humanity in it. And I think that's what when you see AI in imagery or art or films or commercials, there is that essence that you can tell something's off. It's just not right. It doesn't
Yeah,
just like film. I mean, that's why we're trying to emulate celluloid, is because something's off. It just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel whole.
yeah.
I want to ask you something about your music. Are you guys licensed? Are you able to license your music out for films?
That's a fake question.
Okay.
I know she belongs to ASCAP and BMI. So I'm thinking so, but like that's something that she's still exploring. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, yeah. So I just got a thumbs up from off camera.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we're licensed.
Good to know. Um, Captain, how can people reach out to you? What's the
Well,
best
the
way?
best way, find me on Blue Sky. Yeah, the Captain Chambers. That's what I'm on Blue Sky because the reason why I say that is because um, I'm working on revamping my website. It'll be a different address, so I don't want to give that out yet.
Yeah.
I'm building that up, and it's going to have new socials, a blog. It's going to be funneling everything back there, but it's going to be different socials than the norm. I'm going to be using Blue Sky. Blue Sky is coming out with Frames, which is going to be an Instagram replacement.
Hmm.
I'm looking at revitalizing my Vimeo account and looking at what I can do there, posting films there, Daily Motion. Haven't chosen my blog platform yet, but yeah. So everything will be at that website, and I will reveal that at Blue Sky. But it's uh,
Awesome.
the Captain Chambers is all you have to search for.
All right. And we'll link it in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the Downing Cut. I
Yeah.
appreciate your philosophy. You're like a philosopher. A
Well,
lot of
it's good.
wisdom, a lot of perspective, and a lot of
Thank
uh, humanity when it comes down to art. I
well, thank you
appreciate
very
that.
much, and thank you for having me. And it's so good to connect with you again. Let's go get that coffee.